Welcome, welcome, welcome to everyone for our year-end Reviewers Picks of the Year event. We are so excited to have you here. Our editorial director, Tom Donadio, and are thrilled to welcome you to our end of the year reviewer event where 7 book reporter reviewers are joining us tonight to share 2 of their favorite books of the year that released for the first time in 2024. 4 reviewers who have appeared in the previous programs but were unable to join us tonight. There's so many scheduling problems in December. It seems like every child has either a concert or something else that people have to go to because the time between Thanksgiving and Christmas is so tight, and Hanukkah. But we've got their picks and their comments about them. So after our on-camera presentation, Tom is going to be presenting those titles with the PowerPoint presentation. Now, it's worth noting, and we want to be sure to share this, that our reviewers have been responsible for reviewing 650 books this year. We did a total the other day, and it's unbelievable to think back that this is the number of titles that we've done, and yes, it is a wow. And every time I sit there and say, when we turn out every week, and we try to make every week great, when you sit there and look at the total number of trying to make, I think we do 49 updates throughout the year and make them all that good. It's really, my hat goes off to Tom and to our reviewers, because I know he's always trying to pick the right reviewer for each book, and they have turned it in all the time. I love reading the reviews.
Definitely a team effort. It's staggering to see that number. I didn't even read to I can't even comprehend 650 books
Yeah.
this year being reviewed. It's over 650. It's crazy.
Yeah. And what we really love is our reviewers hail from all over the country. We really pride ourselves on this. A lot of publications are New York or LA or just by coastal readers and reviewers. And what we really like to do is we see people from across the country, and we love that. So in the chat, we're asking you to let us know where you are, where you're from, who you are, where you're from, and what your favorite book is. And for tonight's event, please note we're not going to do a Q&A. We're trying to keep things a little bit more in line with where we usually go, which is longer on our afternoon programs. We're going to start by bringing on Pamela Kramer. And I'm going to introduce Pamela as one of our reviewers. She's retired after a career split between practicing law and teaching dual language students and gifted students. She enjoyed combining her love of books and her love of animals with her teaching. She was the national book reviewer for the Examiner.com and a contributor to the Huffington Post. And now she reviews on her blog and on Bookreporter. In addition to recommending adult books, she loves reviewing children's books. She's very involved in animal rescue and will read almost any book about animals. And with that, welcome, Pamela. So good to see you tonight.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. Um, I my two it's always hard to narrow it down to 2 books, and I have to say I was really gratified by some of the people who loved some of the other books that I really loved, like The Gray Wolf by Louise Penny, which was just magnificent and worth waiting 2 years for. But I'm gonna see if I can keep it to 5 minutes. The first book is Jodi Picoult by Any Other Name. And Jodi Picoult's been writing for a long time, and I've been reading her books for a long time. Not every one of them, but this one is different. This one is really different than her usual book. I want to say it's pretty magnificent, really. It's 3 stories in one, and 2 of the stories are they're the same. So there's 2 different versions of the same story, and then there's another story. There's 2 versions of the story that happened during Shakespeare's time. And in that time, there's Amelia, who, according to Jodi Picoult and some other scholars, actually wrote many of Shakespeare's plays. Not all of them, but some of them. And her reasoning is really impeccable. So there's her story. And then the person who's in the modern time is writing a play about Amelia. And so that play also takes place in Shakespeare's time and mirrors Amelia's life. So we kind of see what's happening in the play, and then there's the narrative of what happens, and we see that getting enacted. And then there's the modern version where there's a woman. Oh my God, I read this so long ago. Where there's a woman, Melina. So it's Amelia and Melina, Mel, who it wants to be a playwright, and she wrote a play, but for different reasons, she doesn't want it known that it was a woman who wrote it. So here you have these women 400 years apart who are both publishing their work under a man's name for different reasons, but kind of for the same reason. And you see how things change in 400 years and how things somehow don't change in 400 years. When we see Amelia's life in Shakespeare's time, it's there's parts that are really difficult to read. It's pretty horrendous. She's basically sold as a slave when she's 13 to a man who treats her well, but then she gets pregnant after several years, and he just basically gets rid of her. And what happens then is much worse. And it's a lot about what women went through in that time. And it's pretty appalling. It's pretty shocking. It's not that surprising, unfortunately. But the pages just flow. I mean, it's not. Oh, that means my 5 minutes is up already? No. Okay. Anyway, it's amazing. Okay. Then I've got one more. I'm sorry. Now we got to talk fast. Time goes quickly. This is The Stars Turned Inside Out, and it's not a book that got a lot of press, but it's really, really a good book. It's a murder mystery, but it's a lot more than just a murder mystery. Hold on, let me turn to my notes. It's a murder mystery that takes place at CERN in Switzerland, the nuclear particle, what's the word? Where they split atoms in CERN. And so there's a lot in it about physics and metaphysics, but it starts with this murder mystery, and then it becomes a lot more. There's art, there's a romance, there's characters that you don't really know who they are, and there's a lot of twists in there. There's a mystery of how there can be a person who seems to be almost two different people at different times, yet it's the same person. I can't explain some of the twists because I can't give it away, but it's so much more thoughtful, thought-provoking than just a regular murder mystery. It's really an underrated book. There's betrayal in it. I highly recommend it. And now I'm over my 5 minutes. Thank you.
That's okay. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Pam. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
All right. Next up is Harvey Freedenberg. Harvey practiced intellectual property law and litigation with a large Harrisburg, Pennsylvania firm before he retired in 2017. He's been working as a freelance reviewer since 2005 and is a member of the National Book Critics Circle. He also writes for BookPage, Shelf Awareness, and Kirkus Reviews. Harvey, it's great to see you. Welcome
Great
back.
to see you. Great to see you, Tom and Carol. Thanks very much for having me again this year. So I was just quickly scrolling through the chat and looking for the titles of books that people really enjoyed this year, and I didn't see what looked like too many nonfiction titles. So my first is a nonfiction title. It's a book entitled The Barn, The Secret History of a Murder in Mississippi. I don't have the book, but I could hold up a picture of the cover.
Yeah.
And what made this really special for me in part was that I had an opportunity to review the author, Wright Thompson, who is a fabulous sports writer. He writes for ESPN, the magazine. This book is a retelling of the story of Emmett Till, who was a Black teenager, age 14, who in August of 1955 was murdered by two white men in Mississippi. The crime in their minds was that he whistled at a white woman. He was visiting from Chicago, and these men took him out to a barn on a property outside the little town of Drew, Mississippi, which is in the heart of the Mississippi Delta, beat him, and then eventually murdered him and dumped his body in a river. Wright Thompson is a white Mississippian who grew up 20 miles from the site of this crime and knew virtually nothing about Emmett Till's murder. And in 2020, he was introduced to this story and actually was told that this barn was still standing. It's on a property owned by a dentist in Drew. And he became obsessed with the story. And so he retells the story of Emmett Till's murder, but this book is so much more than that. It's really a history of the Mississippi Delta, of the cotton industry, of blues music, of the Ku Klux Klan. There's so many rich strands to this story that it is worth reading on many different levels. I just want to share one quote from the interview that I did with him, which I think sums up why this book really became a passion project for him. He said, "I'm a proud American. I hope everybody who reads this book will learn that telling the truth about ourselves doesn't make you a weaker American, it makes you a stronger one. And seeing ourselves clearly doesn't make us a lesser country, but a greater one. If the Mississippi Delta, and therefore America, has any future at all, it has to start with standing on one postage stamp of ground and saying, 'This is what happened here.' I certainly didn't start off with that intention, but that became my sort of prayer for the thing. It's not a book, it's a map." So this is a Wright Thompson passion project. He's a beautiful writer, and I can't recommend this book highly enough. So my fiction title is a book entitled Time of the Child, which I just reviewed, I think, about 2 weeks ago for Bookreporter. I didn't have the pleasure of reading the book that precedes this by Niall Williams, who is an Irish writer, born in Dublin, lives in a small town on the western coast of Ireland. But he wrote a novel entitled This Is Happiness, that's set in the little village of Faha in County Clare, Ireland in 1958, at a time when electricity first comes to the village. So I intend to go back and read that one when I can take a break from reviewing. But this novel, Time of the Child, is set 4 years later. It features some of the characters that were in that earlier book, and the story involves the town doctor, Jack Troy, and his daughter, Veronica or Ronnie. And one night shortly before Christmas in 1962, a 12-year-old boy shows up on their doorstep with a newborn baby and drops it off at the doctor's house. That unleashes a number of complications regarding the fact that Ronnie wants to raise his child as a single mother at a time in Ireland when that was unthinkable. So they have to keep this secret for a while, and her father comes up with a somewhat improbable scheme for how they're going to pull this off. But it's just it's a wonderful character study. It's a portrait of a small town, and I would say every sentence in this book is just beautifully constructed. And I'll just close by reading a sentence on the first page. This book literally had me from the first page when I read this sentence. And this is a description of this little town in Ireland. It says, "To those who lived there, Faha was perhaps the last place on earth to expect a miracle. It had neither the history nor the geography for it. The history was remarkable for the one fact upon which all commentators agreed: nothing happened here. The geography was without notable feature, but for being on the furthermost edge of a fabled country where Faha had not so much sprung up as seeped out when the ice retreated and the Atlantic met the western coast of an island with a native weakness for the heroic." That is the second paragraph of this book, and it only gets better from there. So Niall Williams, Time of the Child, and This Is Happiness. He's a wonderful Irish writer, and I highly recommend him. So those are my two choices for this year. And thanks for having me.
Love
Thank
it.
you
Now
so
I want to
much,
read
Harvey.
both.
Right.
That's what's going to happen to me tonight. I can feel it coming. Our next guest is Rebecca Munro, who is a senior project editor at W.W. Norton and Company and is the co-founder of the Peterborough, New Hampshire Silent Book Club chapter. I love that. As well as a freelance proofreader for several publishers. Prior to joining Norton, you'll probably recognize her, she was the editorial manager of our Teen Reads and Kids Reads websites. When she isn't reading, she enjoys snuggling with her husband. She's recently married, so we are even more happy about that for her. She was married in October. And her Pomeranians, testing out new hot sauces and clicking her knitting needles together. So, Rebecca, great to see you again. Lots of fun days in the office as memories. What have you got for us?
Well, it's always great to be here. Hi, Carol. Hi, Tom. Hi, everyone.
Rebecca, so great to see you again.
You. I had a very escapist year, so we are going hard on the thrillers, which is great. Up first, I have Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. If you're not familiar with her, that's for a good reason. She was actually a young adult writer before this, and her switch to adult fiction was stellar. So, Listen for the Lie is a kind of mixed writing style where it's half podcast transcripts and straight fiction writing. This is set in a small town in Texas where 5 years ago, the two young, beautiful it girls of the town, best friends forever, went to a wedding, and the next day, one of them was dead and the other was covered in her blood. Now, it's pretty clear what happened here. If you've read enough true crime or watched enough, horrible movies like I do, you know what's up. But I want you to hold that thought, because when the book starts, it's 5 years later. The girl who survived, Lucy, has kind of fled the area. The case didn't go national, thank God, so she's kind of free. But she knows everyone in her hometown hates her. Even her own family members and friends constantly message her, like, if you did it, you can tell us. So she just has no faith in herself. And then she gets everyone's favorite news ever. A podcaster is doing a story about her whole life and this murder. So she kind of figures she has nothing left to lose. She might as well go home and see what's up. So she does. And if you're expecting exploitation and terrible voyeurism, that is also what she's expecting. But what she finds out is that the podcaster is actually a really genuine reporter. And he actually thinks that there's something wrong in this town. Because, now go back to where you thought she was guilty. Why was the town so quick to blame one of their other it girls? It doesn't really add up when you look at it. So as he's interviewing people in town, she's reconnecting with people, including, by the way, because I know this is sounding very dark, her very often drunk, always flirtatious grandmother, who peppers the story with these fabulous one-liners. And as she's reconnecting with all these people, she's realizing that a lot of people lied about the night that this murder happened. But more than that, a lot of people had been lying to her for pretty much her whole life. And it's not till this podcaster starts asking questions that you see that nothing is adding up. And as the title says, if you're listening, you can hear the lies. And it's just this incredibly compelling, riveting structure, flipping between the podcast strips and her, and I'm going to keep saying the wrong word, scripts. It moves so quickly. It's so compelling. And it's one of these books where if you were paying attention and had all the information, you could have figured it out from the beginning because the lies are there. So it's fabulous, really quick. I know we were all just saying that none of us are ready for Christmas, but if you have 5 minutes to pause your wrapping, I recommend this. You will finish it in a night. It is so good.
It's on my shelf. It's so funny. It's the
so
one of
good.
2024 I didn't read. One of you.
And now we're on to 2025. So
Yeah, there we go.
Hopefully she'll write another. My next one is another thriller. It's called The Night We Lost Him by Laura Dave. Laura Dave, you're probably all a lot more familiar with because she was a very accomplished contemporary / women's fiction writer for a long time. And then she wrote her first thriller, The Last Thing He Told Me, and blew up. It's now like an Apple show with Jennifer Garner. It is everywhere. So she has this really interesting talent where she takes her previous writing, the contemporary fiction, the women's fiction, and she brings that emotional depth to thrillers, AKA my sweet spot. So in this book, it starts off with a man being pushed from a cliff, and that is pretty much all you know. A couple months later, we reunite with we meet his family, including his semi-estranged daughter, his 2 sons who are set to inherit his family business, and they do not know that he was pushed, but the reader does. But they do know something's weird. So it becomes this character study of this man, Liam Noon, and he's a self-made hotel magnate from Brooklyn, New York, very up by your bootstraps, self-made guy, all these life lessons, basically the guy you want to be your dad. But with one kind of glaring problem, which is that he is thrice divorced, 2 families, 3 kids, 1 estranged, but also he is a different person to every single one of them. And I know, you're thinking red flag. But he's not a bad guy, and that is made apparent in every interaction. He's a good father, he's a good businessman, he's a good boss, he's even a good competitor to his biggest competition. But he compartmentalizes himself so thoroughly that no one really knew who he was. And in trying to figure out what happened the night he died, if he was actually murdered, if he jumped to his death, what was going on, his daughter, Norah, starts to kind of unpack some of these compartments and see the full picture of her dad. And even though, as I told you, he's a great guy, that's scary. So as she's trying to figure out, was he murdered? Did he jump? What was going on with his business? What was going on with his love life? Why was he at this remote house that he only went to for solitude? She starts to see this really compelling, very, very fleshed out portrait of her dad that she's not expecting. So it's this fantastic mystery, what happened to him, because we kind of know, but we don't. But more than that is this just gorgeous character study of lives unlived, secrets untold, all these parts of ourselves we hide and why we hide them and what happens when they come out. It's also a really, really special, tender portrait of grief. She's grieving her father, even though they were kind of estranged. She's learning all these fabulous things about him and all these not so fabulous things. So it just has everything. I just saw this when I was looking at the book earlier. The About the Book copy calls it a soulful suspense, and that is a much better catchphrase for it that I can come up with. So soulful suspense, tender, beautiful mystery, everything Laura Dave does is great. And those are my recommendations.
And lots of great stuff about architecture.
Yes.
Architecture, and you will want to stay at all the places that he's built.
And you start looking at your own house to try to figure out what you can do to make it match his house.
Exactly. Thanks so much, Rebecca. Great as always to see you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. All right, and now we are joined by Ray Palen, an award-winning actor, drama teacher, and former executive producer, director for 15 plus years of a highly successful regional theater group that is still based on Long Island. He is also a published playwright with several short plays being registered with the Writers Guild of America. He currently works as a drama teacher in Lake County, Florida. Hi, Ray.
Hi, Ray.
Welcome
Hey,
back.
Tom.
Great to
That
have
was
you
good.
here.
That was good timing. I got the video going as soon as you finished.
Great
Otherwise, it would have
timing,
been
yes.
panic time. Cheers, everyone. Yes, I'm here in sunny and now chilly Florida, which is nice. As Tom knows well, when it came time to think about titles for this event, I read about 250 novels a year, which is a lot, but I love reading. I always have a book in my hand, but when you read that many novels, it's difficult for some to really stand out for you. So when I went through this exercise, rather than kind of pouring through everything that I read and loved, and I usually do thrillers or mysteries or crime or horror, those are always my go-tos, I kind of stepped back and reflected more. And I said, 2024 has been a tough year. I think for humanity, it's been a tough year for me personally. And I wanted to select books that more spoke to me, made me feel good, spoke about the human condition. And that's why I went with one fiction and one nonfiction, neither of them in any of the genres that I usually read. And the first one, which I did end up selecting as my favorite title of the year, was The Life Impossible by Matt Haig. I believe I picked one of his titles before as my favorite book of the year. He blows me away, not just with his adult novels, but even his Boy Called Christmas series and his young adult novels. He's on another level. But what he did with this fictional novel is he really touches you. And I know you read novels, you feel good about them. And that's, I think, why we all read. But this one really, wrapped itself around me. And the first thing that really intrigued me is when you pick up a novel, at least for me, one of the first things I'm going to look at is who blurbed it. What are the other writers or the places out there think about it? And this novel wasn't blurbed by other writers. It was blurbed by famous actors. Benedict Cumberbatch, Stephen Fry, Joanna Lumley. And I'm like, wow, it's not just because they're all fellow Brits, because Matt Haig wrote something that reached them. Benedict Cumberbatch wrote here, it is a wry and tender love letter to the best of being human. And that's what I really walked away with. It's one of these novels that I don't want to describe too much because I'd rather people, if they've never heard of it, they pick it up and read it before Christmas, it will definitely cleanse your soul and make you feel wonderful. It's an old math teacher who's contacted by a former student of hers who's going through a tough time. And she had gone through a tough time after her husband passed away. And she decides, rather than giving him advice, to retell the story of what she did and what happened to her that changed her entire life around, that caused her to leave London and move to this small island in Ibiza. And that's where everything happened. She found out things about the world and about herself that she never knew before. Just the magic of nature and, again, other people. And there's things in here that border on fantasy, but most of it is just straight human connections, some of the best characters I've read in a long, long time. And I didn't want the story to end. I walked away feeling really good. It was like a great cup of cocoa on a chilly December night. And I can't speak highly enough about it. I don't want to say anything more about it other than you need to read this novel, Life Impossible by Matt Haig. That brings me then to my second pick, which is an author who typically was well known for doing fiction, Caleb Carr. Everyone hears Caleb Carr and they think The Alienist or the series that he's had based on his novels, and they don't realize that he had a very, very difficult life. Unfortunately, just 1 month after he wrote My Beloved Monster, which I thought is a wonderful title, but the subtext is Masha, the half-wild rescue cat who rescued me. And it's a cat that he literally found in a shelter and lived with for 17 years. This man was never married. Regrettably, he passed away just a month after this title was released, which was very saddening. But the only thing that made me feel even a little good about that was knowing that he was reunited with Masha, because Masha got him through some really tough times. He lived literally in one of the best named locations I've ever heard, Misery Mountain in the Hudson Valley in upstate New York, all by himself. He had a 3-story cabin built for himself. He was isolated. This man dealt for years with pancreatitis, with neuropathy, and regrettably then got terminal cancer. But it was rescuing Masha from Vermont, actually. He was at an animal shelter that a friend worked at, was not looking for a new animal, and fell in love with her. And for 17 years, she was his sole companion, living in this isolated location where not only he needed something to help him out physically, but she also had everything from skirmishes with bears and raccoons to her own ailments and arthritis and illnesses. And it was almost like they're taking care of each other, kind of was very, very cathartic. Allowed, I think, when she passed, Caleb was ready at that point. I know he was probably a lot sicker even when he wrote this than he let on. But just the fact that an animal, another species, can do that. And the title, My Beloved Monster, he actually took from a poem written in 1996 by Mark Everett. And I have it here. I'm just reading the 3 lines from it that gave him the inspiration for the title. She will always be the only thing that comes between me and the awful sting that comes from living in the world that's so damn mean. So he chose to be an isolationist. He chose to live life on his own terms and deal with his illnesses. And this wonderful nonfiction tale of him and Masha, it brought tears to my eyes. And it's very, very moving. I live with 4 cats myself. 3 of them were rescues from shelters. So I know that feeling, how sometimes, it's not a person who steps into your life who makes that difference. Sometimes it's an animal. So if you enjoyed Caleb Carr's fiction and don't know much about the man, I highly recommend My Beloved Monster. Very moving.
And what I really love, Ray, is that it's a nonfiction book, because I know how much you love thrillers.
Oh yeah, it's amazing too, and Alienist is one of my favorite all-time titles. And Caleb wrote this, and I said, oh, I'll read that. It's about a cat, and it blew me away. But then his passing a month after it came out, it saddened me. But because I had so felt for this book. The first thing that hit me was he's with Masha,
Mm.
And I
and
could tell in your
that was a good
review,
feeling.
I could tell in your review how much of an impact it had on you, and that really
Oh yeah.
in the review. Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Ray. Really appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks,
Cheers,
Ray.
guys. Happy holidays.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Our next guest is Kate Ayers. Kate retired from a career as a court reporter in the Pacific Northwest, and now she enjoys the bulk of her time traveling and writing. She has completed novels in her Mysteries with the Wine List series, which I love, 3 in her Eyes and Ears series, and is currently working on another. So, Kate, what do you have for us?
Wow, it's going to be hard to follow him because that Caleb Carr book sounds really, really good. I'm going to start with The Author's Guide to Murder. Of course, I had to pick that because we have 3 authors here. We have Beatrice Williams, Lauren Willig, and Karen White, or Team W, as they call themselves. And what's fun about it is that it's 3 authors writing together in a collaboration about 3 authors writing together in a collaboration. And the setting is wonderful in that they're going to be at a Scottish castle on a remote island in a snowstorm. So it's just a totally fun book. It's a murder mystery. The 3 authors have gone to the island because of who owns the castle, who is a celebrated literary giant. And they know him, and they're going there because they know him, but they're not particularly fond of him. Of course, he's the one who turns up dead, which makes them very good suspects. And the inspector, let's see, his name is, of course, great Scottish name, Ian McIntosh. He doesn't really like literary people, nor does he like Americans. And he's trying to make some kind of case out of whatever happened. And he's also trying to make some truth out of 3 American novelists who are there to make up stories. So it's great fun. These 3 women who go there end up spending a lot of time with the locals who are not real happy with them. But they're there in a snowstorm. They're there playing in the pub. They're having fun in the streets of this little tiny town. It's small enough that the chief inspector McIntosh, his sister is also the medical examiner, local midwife, and she pours drinks in the pub. So it's a great fun book. It's one of those that you read, enjoy for the mystery and for the bit of satire. So they'll be doing a lot more, I'm sure.
The 3 of them enjoy writing together too.
They
And they
have
don't
to.
ever say who writes which part. They never share which writes which part. And I interviewed them. This is just a quick introduction. I interviewed them once and I didn't get a word in edgewise. I basically introduced them and then I asked them no more questions. And they said, "Do you
I
want to
can
interview us
imagine.
again?" And I said, "What?" And say nothing. I mean, they're really funny together. If you ever get a chance to see them live, it's great. It's really, really fun.
Oh, that would be fun.
Really, really fun. I'll find you an interview with them online. I've got to find one. They're really fun.
That would be fun, yes. Then I did My 3 Dogs. So we have 3 and 3. This one, I will read anything by W. Bruce Cameron, and I will read anything about dogs. I love dogs. Cameron, I also have 3 other of his books back here, and more on the shelves. So, I love him. He has such a way about him when it comes to feeling what dogs feel. He gets inside their head. He understands, or he seems to understand, how they relate to people and how they relate to each other. And the books are all very poignant. This one, it starts out with Liam, who owns Riggs and Luna, his 2 dogs, and he ends up with Archie, who he finds on the end of a chain at a construction site, because he's just that kind of a guy. He can't leave that dog there. So they all live together for a period of time until at one point, for some reason, Liam doesn't come home.
Mhm.
And the dogs are left in the house to wonder what happened to him. And days go by, and it's a very sad situation. But, of course, everybody's still worried about Liam, so they're not as worried about the dog as they would be, dogs as they would be. But it ends up that they go to a shelter, and the shelter's very good and wants to try and keep them all together. But it's too hard, and they end up getting split up. So Riggs is the main dog that keeps them all together. He's the one who has been herding them around and making sure that Archie fits in. And so he now has the job of finding everybody and then finding Liam. So he lives on the streets, and he finds out that people aren't always as nice as Liam. And it's a very poignant story because people aren't all that nice to dogs always. Not everyone is nice.
Mhm.
And he has to search for Liam,
Mhm.
his person. And Liam is presumed dead. So it's a very hard situation for him. It's a heartbreaking story. But it's also a very beautiful story,
Mhm.
like all of W. Bruce Cameron's are. So, I can't recommend it enough. I can't recommend this author enough. I go to St. Vincent de Paul and search for him all the time.
Love it. I
Just
love it.
dearly love him. Yes. So he also has a Christmas book.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I reviewed it for you at some point too. So
Mhm.
sure, it's on your website.
Yeah, and remind us of the title again? Of that,
This is My Three Dogs.
My Three Dogs, and the Christmas one is
A Dog's Perfect Christmas.
Dog's
it's
Perfect
Christmas.
Christmas. Eating,
Okay,
chasing the wrapping paper and ribbon. Okay. Thanks so much, Kate. We appreciate you
so much,
joining
Judy.
us.
Appreciate it. All right, and so joining us now is Stuart Shiffman. Stuart is a lifelong avid reader. After serving 22 years as a state court judge in Illinois, he began a second career teaching and writing. He has written hundreds of reviews for Bookreporter, Illinois Times, a central Illinois newspaper, and several legal publications. His subjects include sports, history, biography, and legal novels. Hi, Stuart.
Hi,
Hi,
Stuart.
Tom. Hi, Carol. Thank you again for doing this.
Absolutely. Great to have you here.
I was doing some homework, and I think, Tom, I wrote my first review for Bookreporter in 2001.
Wow.
So I don't know if I get a gold watch next year or something, but actually it would be 2026.
Thanks, yeah.
I
Many John
chose
Grisham reviews later, by the way.
I chose two sports books this year, and I did so for a couple of reasons. The first is I really think sports books are starting to gain popularity. I'm not sure exactly why, but a lot of people are writing very good sports biographies and books, and on a wide range of subjects. The second reason for my selections were because I know that there are a lot of people who tune into this event to try to get some ideas about what they should buy their reading friends for holiday gifts. And so if you have a husband, son, friend of any kind who is a great sports fan and you're looking for a book for them, I have what I think are two very good suggestions. The first one is, that's on there. Yeah, can you see that? That's Why We Love Football,
Okay.
A History in 100 Moments by Joe Posnanski. Now, first of all, let me just tell you that Joe Posnanski has kind of become I'm not sure exactly what to call him, but he's well known by readers in sports because in the recent years he's written a great book about baseball called The Baseball 100. 2 years ago he wrote Why We Love Baseball, and this year he came out with Why We Love Football: A History in 100 Moments. But spoiler alert, there's a lot more than 100 moments in there. And they're a wide range, and I think that's what makes this book incredibly interesting is, people think about the great moments in football history, and of course they think about Super Bowls, and they think about the immaculate reception. They think about the Doug Flutie touchdown pass. Poznanski goes into a lot of other areas to find great moments in football. He goes into fictional football. He goes into high school football. He goes into college football. He even goes into just everywhere. And I think that's what makes this book interesting. Is that it's not just about the great moments that everybody knows. It's about other moments. For example, one of my most favorite parts of this book, I won't spoil it too much, I think, if I tell you that he talks about the film Rudy. Now, even if you don't know anything about football, you've probably seen Rudy because it's usually on like once a week on some TV channel. And what he talks about is how Rudy is based upon a lie. And he tells the real story. I won't spoil that for you, but if you've ever seen that movie and you're really interested about it, you can read his book and find out what it is about what really happened in the Rudy world. It's a great book. Poznanski was described by somebody as a puppy dog of a writer, and I think he is. He just writes in a way that makes you very comfortable with what you're reading. I think you'll enjoy it, even if you're not a big football fan, and I highly recommend it. My second book is a little bit different, but again, it's a sports-themed book. It's called Perfect Eloquence, and it's an appreciation of Vin Scully. Now, some of you are from New York, some of you are from California, but everyone has at some point in their life, even if they've never really watched a sporting event, had the opportunity to hear Vin Scully's voice. It was an amazing thing, and when you read this book, you'll learn a little bit more about him. But Scully started off his career when he was 22 years old in Brooklyn as an announcer for the Brooklyn Dodgers. Now, that was back in the 1940s. He worked for 67 years. He went with the Dodgers to California. He also did some national games along the way. He retired, and shortly after he retired, he passed away. And this book was written about him as a tribute by the people who knew him. People in the world of sports, people in the world of movies, people in the world, a few people in the world of politics. He was a very devout man who experienced some tragedy in his life, but he never seemed to let it bother him. He was a unique announcer in one respect. He often worked alone. Nowadays, if you watch a sporting event, there's 3, sometimes 4 people in the booth, all trying to get a word in edgewise. Scully worked alone. He worked on the radio, but he was a great announcer. And one of the best tributes he ever received was from Ray Charles, who wanted to meet Scully. And he said the reason he wanted to meet him was because watching a game didn't mean anything to him. Of course, he was blind. He couldn't see. But it's all in the sound. His broadcasts are almost musical. In 2016, Scully received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and President Obama, in giving him the award, said the game of baseball has a handful of signature sounds. You hear the crack of the bat, you've got the crowd singing in the 7th inning stretch, and you've got the voice of Vin Scully. This is a wonderful book. If you read it, one of the things you can do is you'll read about some of these moments in Scully's life and when he was saying on the radio what he did. You can then, if you'd like, you can go to YouTube and you can probably just type in Vin Scully, Sandy Koufax perfect game, Vin Scully, Keith Gibson World Series, and you'll hear the actual announcing. And again, you don't have to be a baseball fan to really, truly respect and admire Vin Scully. So those are my 2 books for this year, and I hope you'll enjoy them.
Great. Thank you so much, Stuart. Really appreciate it.
And the second book somebody was asking is Perfect Eloquence and Appreciation of Vin Scully. So somebody was
Yes,
asking who
here.
that was in the chat.
Okay, it's University of Nebraska Press.
Our
Great.
last guest for the evening is Bronwyn Miller. Bronwyn has worked in publishing and film for the last 20 years. Apart from great writers and books, she's a fan of theater, live readings and concerts, as well as urban hiking, which is a fancy way to say walking around the city aimlessly. I love that. That's a great line. So what do you have for us, Bronwyn? Can't wait to hear.
Hi, Carol. Hi, Tom. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for
Bronwyn.
having me tonight. This has been so much fun. And I kind of did like Harvey did because we were given two books to choose, which actually made it easier to kind of narrow it down. I did one fiction and one nonfiction. So the novel that I chose is The Last One at the Wedding by Jason Rekulak. And this wasn't really on my radar. I didn't see a lot about it on Bookstagram or Book Talk, but I went to a local reading. I live outside Philly, and he lives in Philly with his family. Went to a local reading at my bookstore. He was there. He gave a talk about it, and I was riveted. So I immediately got the book. And people that have blurbed this thriller on the back, just to give you an idea, Riley Sager, Mary Kubica, Grady Hendrix. So it's that type of thriller. It's kind of like The Perfect Couple, the Ellen Hildebrand, that gets a little more sinister in that it takes place over a long weekend at a wedding. And very shortly into the celebrations, a body turns up. And we begin our story with a 50-something widower, this lovely man who works as a UPS driver who lives in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. And he has an adult daughter who's in her early 20s, and they've been estranged for a couple of years. It begins with her getting back in touch with him to say, Dad, I'm getting married. I want you to come to my wedding and give me away. All is forgiven. We're just going to move forward. And he gets to meet the intended, and very quickly red flags are becoming very apparent. And when they get to the celebration, the groom's ex-girlfriend turns up dead. So as it goes along, it's riveting. You're in it from the first page. It goes at a lightning clip. If you have a couple of hours to spare, you can do it probably in one sitting. And it has that propulsive narrative that just keeps it going. And the characters are great. The writing is super tight. And I can't say enough about it. It's a great, fun thriller read. And he's also the author of Hidden Pictures was his last book. And I was chatting with the agent, and I already found out that they're in negotiations for a film or TV deal already. So no surprise there. I highly recommend that. My next book that I chose, I don't have a copy to hold up, but it's the memoir, The Friday Afternoon Club by Griffin Dunn. And Griffin Dunn is an actor, now author, also director. From the storied family, his dad was Dominic Dunn. His sister was an actress, Dominique Dunn, who was murdered in the early 80s. And this book is a memoir of his family growing up in a kind of unconventional family that went between New York and LA. And they were very much in the movie business for a good part of their time. And their dad, Dominic Dunn, is well known as being like an incredible raconteur and writer. And his books, I've read every one of his books, and they're fabulous. And Griffin has inherited that great, juicy, gossipy storytelling from his father, who's now deceased, sadly. But his stories are so unbelievably fun and funny. Like, he has stories. Sean Connery saved him from drowning at the Beverly Hills pool, just happened to be there and rescue him. His first girlfriend was Carrie Fisher. He's got incredible stories, and he tells them wonderfully. Like, you're on the edge of your seat reading them. But the part that I found the most poignant about this book was when he goes into the murder and subsequent trial of his sister, Dominique Dunn, who was murdered by her abusive boyfriend. And it was just a travesty of justice. I think he ended up getting less than 2 years. And it was featured recently in when they did Monsters, the Menendez brothers. They had Nathan Lane portray Dominic Dunn, and a little bit of that backstory was used in it. It's just so heartbreaking. And he tells it in a way that you don't get that perspective of, what does it feel like for the family members to sit in court every day and have to listen to that awful testimony and then have him basically get away with it.
Mhm.
It's just heartbreaking. And in between the gossipy stories, that was just like a poignant part of it. And he's a really gifted writer. And I hope he writes more.
Yeah.
So they're my two.
It's really terrific. And you know what's really terrific? It's somebody asked the name. It's the Friday Afternoon Club, Family Memoir by Griffin Dunn. And it's the start of when Dominic Dunn starts to write about a lot of trials. And really when he's
Exactly.
writing about the Menendez brothers, it's because he's thinking of Dominique. I listened to this book on audio and it is narrated by Griffin and it's terrific, including that whole scene with Carrie Fisher, which is absolutely, really absolutely funny. So yeah, I read that one as well and I completely enjoyed it because it's a Hollywood scene, but from a different point of view. It's from a
Right, which
different,
made it different.
and it's really about his family splitting and who's in LA and who's in New York. And I just one real quick aside is when we were first starting Book Report, we had no money. We were still not rich, but we were starting out and we would meet we didn't have an office. We'd meet in the Royalton Hotel. And we would sit in the Royalton Hotel, which is where everybody was swank, hung out for lunch. But we couldn't stay there for lunch. We'd probably go to McDonald's for lunch because we had nothing. Okay. But Dominic Dunn came in one day and he walked past and he goes, Jesse, my dear, what are you doing, to my business partner, Jesse Kornbluth? And he says, Jesse, what are you up to? And Jesse said, we're starting this site on AOL, explaining this thing to Dominic Dunn. Okay. And Dominic walks away and comes back. He goes, will you interview me? And we're like, of course we would interview you.
Absolutely.
Every single time I think of the early days, I think of Dominic Dunn just sitting there. And then we watch everybody from Condé Nast coming in to go to lunch and we wave at everybody, but they don't know this is our office. This is what we've got at the point right now. We haven't found yet the office that overlooked the back of some other building. So it was really funny.
Do you remember the round room, the martini room that looked
Yes.
like Jeannie's bottle from My Dream of Jeannie? You should have set up there.
Well, we also heard, okay, this is going to be a little crass, that in the men's room, there was water that came down and everyone would urinate against the wall. So my friend held the door for me while I went in and looked, and then she went in and looked, and we walked out and some guy just stood there and looked at us and we said, waterfall. That's all we said.
Not what you're thinking.
It was quite a moment. It was quite a moment. So thank you very much, Bronwyn. It's always so
Thank
good to
you.
see you.
Thank you, Bronwyn.
Great to see you both. Thanks, everybody.
You too.
Okay, Tom, I'm going to share my screen. Yes.
All right, yeah, because now we're going to be presenting books from 4 reviewers who are not able to join us, unfortunately, but we're very grateful that they were able to send us their picks with their comments about them. So
We just have to stop from being able to enable editing. I don't know why I can never just get this thing to go on. Slideshow from beginning. How's that?
Okay, yeah, perfect. So we're gonna start with Eileen Zimmerman Nicol, who had a long career writing code for computers in the tech industry. She's now retired and still enjoys writing, although for human audiences, book reviews, magazine articles, poetry, and long fiction. When she's not babysitting her grandson or reading, she sails in Alaska, does yoga, plays tennis, volunteers in the community, and studies Buddhism. So Eileen's first pick is Here One Moment by Liane Moriarty, which Carol actually picked as a bets on selection this year. A mysterious older woman gets out of her airline seat and begins methodically telling her fellow passengers how and when they will die. And when they land, some of these predictions begin to come true. Liane Moriarty spins this outrageous premise into a thought-provoking and thoroughly entertaining novel. I cannot get enough of this author, and she makes me want to move to Australia.
Oh, really terrific. I really enjoyed it. But you think about pointing out, oh, you're going to die now, and this is what's going to happen to
I
you.
know,
Scary
it
thought.
does sound like an intriguing premise for sure. And Eileen's second pick is After Annie by Anna Quinlan. This novel setting is the aftermath of the sudden death of a young mother of 4. As in all of Anna Quinlan's novels, humanity in all its glory and pettiness is the true subject. You will come to love Annie's husband, her oldest daughter, and her best friend as they survive the seasons and go on as they must. Anyone who has lost someone precious will relate to these characters' grief, heartbreak, and ultimate resilience. And Carol actually interviewed Anna earlier this year.
Yeah, she was terrific. Really terrific.
Mm-hmm. And so next up is Megan Elliott. Megan is originally from the Chicago area and currently lives in Southern California, where she works for an entertainment news website and spends her days watching and writing about TV, though she prefers reading, of course. And so Megan's first pick is Cross by Austin Duffy, who delivers a tense tale of life in a Northern Irish border town set in 1994 in the days leading up to the ceasefire that promised to bring an end to the Troubles. Cross follows a group of IRA operatives grappling with the possibility that there is a traitor in their midst, as well as various residents of Cross, including an outcast teenage girl and the outspoken mother of a supposed informant for the British. Austin Duffy's gripping, brutal story of political intrigue and personal betrayal unspools in the lyrical voice of a collective narrator, drawing attention to the ways communities cope with the toll of ongoing sectarian conflict. The result is a powerful, poetic thriller about the costs and consequences of political violence. And Megan's second pick is Good Material by Dolly Alderton, which was a Read with Jenna pick from earlier this year. A struggling 35-year-old comedian spirals into the madness when his longtime girlfriend suddenly dumps him in Dolly Alderton's hilarious and heartfelt second novel. Andy is blindsided when Jen abruptly ends their 3-year relationship. To cope, he drinks too much, adopts a low-carb diet, flirts with random women on Instagram, and briefly moves onto a houseboat. It all sounds mundane, but Alderton's snappy dialogue, genuine empathy for her characters, and nuanced depiction of heartbreak, friendship, and feeling lost in your 30s, plus a satisfying twist in the book's final third, make this a feel-good read for those who enjoy their rom-coms with a little bite. Those are Megan's picks. And next up is Norah Piehl.
Thank you.
I think somebody needs to turn off their sound. Can you just give me 1 second, Tom? I think somebody needs to turn off their sound, one of the presenters.
Yeah. Stuart,
Okay.
can you turn off your sound?
Yeah.
Okay. So Norah worked for 10 years at the Boston Book Festival, overseeing their day-to-day operations, and most recently was the director for literary programs at the Bay Area Book Festival. She's currently the executive director at Litquake, San Francisco's literary festival. Norah is a former children's bookseller and has also worked in the publishing industry for both university and trade publishers. And thank you, by the way, Stuart, for meeting. And so Nora's first book is Word Hunter by Stella Sands. She says, I was that kid who actually enjoyed diagramming sentences in school back when it was still on the curriculum. So I'm more than a little gratified that sentence diagramming is having a moment, kind of. In addition to Matthew Baker's ingenious new graphic novel, The Sentence, one of the best thrillers I read this year, stars Maggie Moore, an aspiring forensic linguist. Yep, that's a real profession, who applies her brilliant grammar skills to solving the disappearance of 2 young women. This is a stellar series opener from an author best known for several true crime books, and it's a quick read to boot. And Nora's second choice is Glorious Exploits by Ferdia Lennon. I confess that I was first drawn to this googly-eyed cover, and it certainly is a googly-eye cover. Much like the book itself, it blends the serious with the silly, the ancient with the modern. Set in Sicily during the aftermath of the Peloponnesian War, the novel features 2 unlikely theater directors and an even more unlikely cast, the Athenian prisoners of war who, thanks to an oral tradition, remember the plays of Euripides word for word, using modern dialogue to surprising and often hilarious effect. Ferdia Lennon's debut bears witness to the power and limitations of art in times of war. And our last reviewer is Sarah Rachel Egelman. Sarah lives in New Mexico, where she's a professor of religion and humanities. She also works and teaches in the Albuquerque Jewish community. She enjoys writing, knitting, spending time outdoors, and especially reading. Sarah's first pick is Only Here, Only Now. Tom Newland's unforgettable debut novel centers on a young Scottish woman named Cora, a protagonist with heart and grit in a story of challenges both mundane and extraordinary, and of emotional opportunities with the power to transform. Cora dreams of bigger and better places, but achieving her goals is a constant uphill battle. And she doesn't always recognize the difference between the people who love her unconditionally and those who are themselves obstacles in her path. Newland's prose flows so well by turns conversational and philosophical. This is a stellar first outing and a singular coming-of-age story written with depth, honesty, insight, humor, and an abiding respect for its characters. And her second pick is Didion and Babbitts. Lily Analick has penned another book about the fantastic and singular Eve Babbitts, this time exploring her relationship with the enigmatic literary institution Joan Didion. Analick's narrative style is loose, excited, and conversational, not unlike Babbitts's own, which is the perfect tone and form for this particular look at Didion and Babbitts. Gossipy and deadly serious, intellectual and entertaining, heartbreaking and heartfelt, Didion and Babbitts is a raucous, sprawling, and unforgettable book that examines women in the literary arts, mid-century California, and the curses and gifts of the creative impulse.
Thank
And
you very
there
much, Tom. Wow,
those
that was
four,
great.
and we really do appreciate, again, those four who were able to submit their comments, even though they weren't able to join us on camera. And thank you, Carol, for directing the PowerPoint there.
I know I push forward very, very well, don't I? I mean, really, Tom, I mean, impressive,
It's
right?
a team effort.
I want to say thank you. First of all, I want to say a big thank you to Tom Donadio. I want to stop here for a second. This is something off script. He's an amazing guy. And this is somebody who assigns the books. He assigns those 650 books. He looks for the perfect reviewer for each of those 650 books that we do. And then when their copy comes in, and first of all, if more than one wants to do the book, he figures out who's going to be the best to be doing the book. And then from there, when the reviews come in, he edits them and makes sure that everything shines with all the promotion copy. So my hat's off to you, because those 650 were not edited by me. They were edited by you, and they were assigned by you. So my big clap for you. It's not me. I'm often the face of this site. This is the person who's definitely not doing more than pulling the strings. He's working in tandem with me to pull together everything that we do. And I really appreciate you, Tom. And thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Carol. I really
So I
appreciate
want to
it.
thank all our reviewers and the guests and the reviewers who sent us their picks. We really, really appreciate those who were able to be live. And we liked being able to do the picks, also be able to share those who couldn't be with us tonight. I'm proposing a toast to those reviewers. We're lucky to have them, as well as the readers. We're going to follow up with an email with a link to this presentation as both a video and a podcast. And we'll probably send a list of all the books that we discussed as well, just in case anybody didn't catch the titles and the authors. Then you can watch it again, or perhaps share it with other book-loving friends. A reminder that we're going to do our next Bookaccino live book preview event on January 8th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We're going to cover books from January 7th through February 4th. And we're going to look ahead at some March titles. And sign up is available for that on Bookreporter. Please keep in mind that we have more than 210 Bookreporter Talks to Author interviews available on our YouTube channel, the Book Report Network, and wherever you listen to podcasts. And we actually reshaped the channel last night. We put all the Bookaccino Live events together. We put all the Bookaccino Live book clubs and all the Bookaccino Live events that we do in the Talks to programs. So just know that we did a big reorg last night. I was just like in there trying to figure out exactly how we could realign everything. And I also want to thank Francesca Smith, who is working with us, who helped me work on getting the YouTube in order as well. To stay on top of what we're doing at the Book Report Network, including all our events and contests, and there are a lot of contests, folks, sign up for the Book Reporter and Reading Group Guides newsletters. And to never miss any information about an event, be sure to sign up for our events newsletter. And all of our newsletters can be found on tbrnetwork.com/newsletter. And I want to take this moment to wish you a very happy holiday, a brilliant 2025. I've already started reading for 2025, and it's going to be a great year. So, Tom, want to say thank you as well?
Yeah, no, thank you so much to all of our reviewers and all of you who are joining us. We really appreciate it. Again, we always look forward to this event, and it's always so much fun to get all the reviewers gather together. We appreciate everything that you've done for us. Makes my life a whole lot easier when I know that we have a reliable group of reviewers who are going to put forth great work for us. So really do appreciate it. It makes me look good. So appreciate that. And yeah, thank you so much, and happy holidays to everybody.
Happy
Enjoy.
holidays, everybody. Have a lovely evening. Thank you so much.